Hello, and welcome to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and I am so grateful that you are here listening to this podcast. I have just the best episode for you today. I've actually interviewed my friend Laura. She is a fellow health coach, but she's a ray of sunshine. We talk all about cravings, about your relationship with food, and overall just finding freedom with food and not letting it rule your life anymore. We talk about blood sugar regulation. It's really just so packed, and you're definitely going to want to listen to the entire episode. I wanted to also go ahead and catch up with you. It's been a week since I last talked to you, and honestly, I haven't been up to too much. I probably start every episode like that. I always say I haven't been up to too much, and then I list a bazillion things that I did this past week. But this past week, I did get to go watch my cousins, and so I was with them for 4 days, and it was just such a blast. I always love getting to spend time with them and really just kind of play that mom role for a little bit, you know. We got to go swimming and got a lot of ice cream, made them some good desserts. It was just such a good time. It was also a good step away from everything with work, especially too. I know like when I'm at home, I feel like I need to work 24/7, but when I'm in a different environment, I allow myself to take a step back. And although I did some work, it wasn't anything too crazy. So then today I've just been catching up. I got home early this morning, so I've just been catching up on more of like the admin side of the business, tracking budget, expenses, all of the fun things. But let's go ahead and get into the segment 2, where I talk about how I am nourishing my mind, body, and spirit, knowing that all three really need to be in conjunction and be nourished in order for us to feel our absolute best and live a truly well-rounded life. And so I would say how I'm nourishing my body is I'm still running, and this might be how I'm nourishing my body for the next however many weeks I'm training for a half marathon. And I don't mean to bring it up every single episode. The only reason I bring it up is because I finally had a moment this last week where I was running and I genuinely enjoyed the entire process. And if you are someone who fears running, again, I said last episode, that's me, 100%, hated running my entire life. But I was running with a friend, and we were running down by the river by my house and then back up. Anyway, we made like a 6-mile loop. And by the end of it, I felt like I could have gone another 4 miles. And that never, ever happens for me. And so it's not even so much of like physically exercising of running that is, you know, the part that I want to talk about, but it's also the mindset piece that comes with that. It's like when you finally find joy in running and you get to the end of however long you were going to run, if it's a mile, that's wonderful, right? Like that is an accomplishment. It's like when you get to the end of that and you just feel good mentally and you weren't, you know, having to yell at yourself to suck it up the whole time. Because sometimes I feel like that some days too, where it's like I'm running and my side starts cramping and my legs are tired and I'm like, stop being such a little baby, like just get over it, you're fine. I'm like, okay, a little tough love's not bad, but when you have to go for a long period of time, like yelling at yourself, trying to motivate you to like kick it into gear and stop feeling sorry for yourself, it's not so much fun to run. So having a run that was just like so mindful. We did a mindful mile where we just said good things about ourselves, and it was honestly just very refreshing. So that would be how I'm nourishing my body. How I'm nourishing my mind is, like I had mentioned in the catch up too, I've just been taking some time away from work as I watched my cousins this last week. How I'm nourishing my spirit, I'm going to be honest, I had a really hard time coming up with something today for this because I was thinking on it and I was thinking about how I really should figure out, you know, how I've been doing this last week. But at the same time, I kind of felt like a fraud if I would lie and say I was doing all these things to nourish my spirit when really like that's an area that I definitely got a little off track with this last week and did not really prioritize. And, you know, I think too, week to week, yes, day to day, we want to nourish our mind, body, and spirit. But, you know, sometimes if you have a week where it's an off week, it doesn't mean that that's going to lead to 2 weeks that are off or that you're going to start feeling immediately terrible. But I just know that now I've reflected, I know that's something I've been lacking in, and that's something I need to begin to implement back into my routine. So like every morning, I would do a little bit of a Bible study and do some journaling reflection. I haven't done that for 7 days. And we didn't go to church on Sunday. We didn't go to church the Sunday before. So it's like those little things that typically week to week would hold me, pretty strong to being nourished within my spirit, I have not been doing. And I want to be truthful with that because I'm not here to, claim to be doing everything perfectly, right? Not everybody is always going to be on 24/7, and that's okay because sometimes we get off track. It's just about how you get back on track and how you really talk to yourself to get back on that level and to get back with maybe the habits that you're wanting to implement. It's not just thinking, well, I didn't do it for a week, let's just give up on it, but rather view it as a time for you to really pick it up again and try again and have no shame in that either. I wanted to keep today's intro short because I do have such a great episode for you today. I actually had on my friend Laura that I talked about in the beginning of today's episode. She is a teacher turned health coach. So she works with women who are new to health, establish routines so they can both lose weight and also feel great in their clothes without traditional dieting practices. Laura is so passionate about helping women who feel lost find freedom in food and exercise and overall just feel so confident in their skin. She also recently started a podcast called Isn't She Powerful? And I've had the chance to listen to the first few episodes, and let me tell you, they are so good. So if you haven't listened to those, I would highly recommend. I'm going to go ahead and link that in the show notes. But with that, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Laura, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited. This is a really awesome podcast that I'm really thankful that I get to be a part of.
Thank you. Yeah, well, let's just go ahead. We're just going to dive right into it today. So, can you just get started with telling me more about your health journey and how you kind of got started with doing health coaching?
Yeah, definitely. So, growing up, I was never super into health. I really honestly didn't know anything about health at all. I ate, the normal American diet, just $1 pizzas and Tyson chicken nuggets, all the normal things that an American coming from a middle class family eats. And then in high school went through a period of kind of not eating, restricting a lot so that I could lose weight and hopefully make some friends. Of course, that did not work. And in college, I did make some friends, and I used that as my opportunity to eat a lot of food. And I ended up gaining about 40 pounds from high school to college. After that, I, graduated. I met my husband, and he was kind of going through like a little thing where he was trying to lose weight and get healthier. And I would go to the gym with him on the weekends. That was really the only time we got to see each other. So I was going to the gym with him on the weekends, and it was fun. It was good, but I still wasn't committed to it. I didn't have any desire to actually, live any differently. And then COVID happened, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm sitting at home all day, every day. I'm just going to start going on walks around my yard. Like, I was living with my parents at the time. So I did. I started going on walks in the afternoons, just made laps around my parents' backyard, and it started to feel good. I enjoyed it. I started doing YouTube workouts during that same time, and I started to lose a little bit of weight, and I was posting my workouts on social media, and I just found that really fun and encouraging and just like a nice little outlet. And from there, it just kind of grew and expanded. And like I said, lost 30 pounds. I've now been able to keep it off for 2 years. And last year in May, I decided that I was ready to do something a little bit different. And I signed up for health coaching classes through the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which I know that's where you went to, Bailey.
Yes.
And I really loved it. And I started working with clients, and so the rest is history. Now here we are.
Wow. Yeah. What I love is just how real your story is, too. I remember when I was getting to know you, this was probably back like 6 months ago, if not more already. But just like the transformation, I know you post a lot of like before and after photos, but I think too just emotional, like transformation of like not being consistent, like going to the gym, not being consistent, enjoying it, but it wasn't really anything like that you did, obviously, like all the time. And then now it's like you're coaching women through that, which is just such like a 180,
Hmm.
And I want to go back to when you talked about how in high school you had that period of restrictive eating. How did you notice like your mindset played into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, during high school, I was kind of a loner, a little bit of an outsider. I mean, I had a friend or two, but it wasn't anything, super um it wasn't a lot of ground to stand on, if you will. And so I really thought, the reason that I didn't have friends was because of the way I looked. And so I started, like I said, it started by just skipping breakfast. I was like, if I can just like eat as little food as possible, then I'll get skinny and then people will probably like me. So I skipped breakfast. And that was easy. I mean, I was rushing out to get to school anyway, so no big deal. And then eventually I started skipping lunch. And that one wasn't even really from the point of view of wanting to get skinny. It was just like I didn't have anybody to eat lunch with. So I went and sat in the bathroom, which I know that sounds like a movie, right? Like a TV show, but it's real life. I actually did that. Sad times. It's okay. Life moved on. We're good now. And then yeah, I think during that time, I was also running cross country and playing soccer. And if you look back at pictures, you can definitely, I didn't at the time tell that I wasn't eating enough. But you can definitely tell from pictures that I wasn't healthy. And even though I looked that way at the time, I didn't think that I did. You know what I mean? Like it was very much that body dysmorphia coming through of like, I still thought that I looked the same way that I had all my life, which was I hated my stomach. I hated my boobs. I hated my thighs, like every part about me. And I constantly told myself, you're ugly, you're fat, nobody likes you, you don't like yourself. Like, and I was constantly telling myself that. And I think things started to change for me when many years later I started to say like, Laura, you're awesome, you're beautiful, you're so cool, people want to be like you know what I mean? Like I was telling myself these positive things, and that's whenever I was really able to make the change and sustain the change. But at that time I didn't love myself, and I treated myself like I didn't love myself for sure.
Hmm. Wow. Wow, I'm so sorry you went through that. It's just like everybody has a story, and there's so many layers to our story, too. I think, like, especially when you're in high school, that's such a hard time. Like you said, you were by yourself, like skipping breakfast and skipping lunch. It didn't seem like a big deal, and you maybe physically didn't notice any difference when you looked in the mirror. But then, like, as you look back, you're like, okay, wow, like, it really hits you. Like, I did have, maybe some problems that I should have worked through, but I'm so glad you were able to then later in life. Do you feel like that transition from high school to college was kind of where things, either improved or maybe didn't improve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I graduated college and then I graduated high school and then went to college immediately that summer. I moved 2 hours from home, and my first year of college was really rough. It was very much like high school. I skipped a lot of meals because I didn't want to go eat by myself. But then I would also like hide in my dorm room and like eat Oreos as my dinner, so nobody would actually know that I was eating just trash all the time. Um, and then my sophomore year, I joined a sorority. I got a roommate assigned to me that I ended up becoming very best friends with. And my life started kind of doing like a 180 in terms of social life. Like I really loved my social life at the time. I was super, super happy because the whole reason that I ever wanted to be healthy, aka be skinny, was so that I could have friends, right? Well, I wasn't working towards that anymore. I had friends, so I didn't care anymore about how I looked. And when that happened, I started eating a lot more. I was just very unhealthy during college. I would go, grab fast food every single night of the week. I would have ice cream multiple times a week. I was eating ice cream for breakfast. As you can tell, I loved ice cream and sweets, still do. And I was drinking a lot of soda. It was just one of those things where the whole reason that I ever wanted to look the way that I felt like society wanted me to look was so that I could be accepted by society, and I was. So I stopped caring about myself in that way. And that led to a lot of weight gain and eventual unhappiness with how I looked.
Hmm. Yeah, that's hard because you no longer equated friends to looking a certain way, but then that's when you started to eat by yourself in your dorm room. And I was so guilty of doing that too. And so what is something I think back to, like when I was in college, what I would have wanted to hear from somebody. So what would you suggest or recommend or want to tell somebody who's maybe making that transition from high school to college, or even college to working a full-time job, to make it a little bit easier when it comes to foods or mindset?
Yeah, I think remembering that your food is fuel for your body, and that in order for you to get to do all the fun things that college has to offer, it's really important that you fuel your body appropriately. I was constantly, and this is so not my personality, but I was constantly missing classes or running late. Like I remember so many times waking up and having to jump up, grab my backpack, and literally run out of the door in my pajamas to get to class on time. And it's because I wasn't taking care of myself. Like I had such little energy because I was fueling my body with just food that was not fuel. It was just junk. You know what I mean? And so I think remembering that in order for you to look back on that time and like truly have good memories. Yes, I have amazing memories. I loved college, best years of my life by far. But I think that in order for you to truly enjoy your experience and get the most out of it, remembering that like that your health is a priority, and health does not equal being skinny. It doesn't equal looking a certain way. That means taking care of your body from the inside out, like getting the mindset tools like in place before you go, learning to love yourself before you go, not your body, not the way you look, but yourself and who you are as a person, and honoring that whenever you get into the college space. Because when you get to college, everything is so different, right? Like you meet so many new people, you have so many different experiences. You can truly become somebody new and take your life in a new direction if you really wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. So before you go, figuring out who do you want to be, who do you want people to know you as, and honoring that person when you get there.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I love that. That is just like 12 out of 10 answer with that. I think like if I would have just known that, because that affects too the people you surround yourself with, the environments you enjoy having fun. If you can't get up out of bed to go to work or to go to class, it's because there's something going on there, like it's maybe you're staying up way too late, but a lot of times it has to be linked to the food you're eating too.
Yeah.
Like brain fog and fatigue, that's all linked to inflammation too. We have to find a way to have the balance of like enjoying college, really finding that freedom that comes with college because you really get to learn yourself, but also, reining it in enough that you're taking care of yourself and prioritizing your health before you go and pour into other people is what I always say. Like you always have to have a full cup before you pour into other people. And it's the same like with your classes or with a job. Like you have to prioritize yourself. And I think when we stop doing that or when we don't do that, that's when we notice definitely like a decline in our overall health and well-being.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And like you, going back to what you were saying too, of, who you surround yourself with. My freshman year, like I said, was a exact replica of high school. Basically, I was trying to fit in with people that I just wasn't meant to fit in with. Like I had a boyfriend most of college who is a fine person, but just not the type of person that I should have been with at that time. I was surrounding myself with people that I just wasn't happy with. I just was very, very unhappy high school and then my first year of college. And I think I used that time to abuse my relationship with myself, my self-love, as well as food. I was, like I said, eating a lot of food that just didn't make me feel good. And it gave me that temporary satisfaction of feeling good temporarily. But then over time, it would just lead to a lot of not feeling good. And I didn't associate it with food at the time because I didn't know what I know now. But yeah, I think like you said, like surrounding yourself with people that you truly enjoy being around and people that help you become the person that you want to be is super beneficial during that major transitional time in your life.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I want to go back to, I know you had said you used to like run out the door without breakfast, but I also know you talk a lot about having like your blood sugar levels be very stable throughout the day. So can you like walk me through either like a day of eating or what that looks like for you to kind of like keep those blood sugar levels pretty consistent instead of having like the peaks and the valleys?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. I love talking about blood sugar balancing. Breakfast is one of the key tools for that. The reason that I am so passionate about blood sugar balancing is because of my insane sweet tooth. I've mentioned it a couple of times already, but like it drove my life for a long time of like I made decisions based on sweet foods. That was what controlled all of my thoughts for a really long time. And if I wasn't eating, I was still eating something sweet. And that was all I was eating. So understanding exactly what to eat for a good day of blood sugar balancing. I would say, starting off your day with absolutely always having protein at breakfast. I think a lot of times we only eat carbs at breakfast. And so we'll eat, waffles or oatmeal or something like that. And we think we're making a good choice. And that's not a bad choice, but pairing it with a protein is essential for balancing your blood sugar levels. And then lunchtime, making sure that you have at least half a plate of vegetables as well as protein and carbs. High fiber carbs are ideal, but you could also, any carbs are fine. High fiber carbs are more ideal. Having protein during an afternoon snack, as well as some kind of pairing it with something else. So instead of just having a protein or just having a carb or just a vegetable, pairing that with a healthy fat or one of those other macronutrients is essential for blood sugar balancing. And then dinner time as well, making sure that you are having vegetables and protein. And then if you want to have dessert, always, you can definitely have dessert, but I encourage you to have it after a balanced meal or snack rather than as a meal or snack. I think that was one thing that I really had to learn is I really struggled a lot with cravings, and I thought I just can't say no to my sweet tooth. But what I was doing was putting my body on a blood sugar roller coaster. And it was because I was eating sugar on an empty stomach a lot. Mm-hmm. And so instead of doing that, instead of having it as your afternoon snack, have it with your afternoon snack. Instead of having it as your breakfast, have it after your breakfast. You know what I mean? Like have that sweet thing, but then have it after something else. And then another blood sugar hack is to take an after dinner walk. Like just go on a 10-minute walk, move your body in some way. It may not be a walk. You can take a shower, you can clean the kitchen, move your body for some way after you eat for at least 10 minutes. And that is going to really encourage your blood sugar levels to stay stable as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to, and I want you to explain to why it's so important that your blood sugar is balanced.
Absolutely. I mean, blood sugar affects a lot more than we think it does. It affects our mood. It affects our productivity. We have a lot of brain fog whenever our blood sugar is imbalanced. Mostly what I preach it for is cravings and your sweet tooth, because I think a lot of times we think you just don't have the willpower to say no to sugar and sweet things. But that's not what it all is. Growing up, my dad had diabetes. He still does. And I think we associate blood sugar and we only think we have to worry about our blood sugar levels if we are diabetic. That is so not true. Blood sugar is, if it affects every single person on this earth, we all have blood sugar. And so if we can keep those levels stable, then that helps, with weight gain or weight loss. It also stops us from potentially becoming pre-diabetic or diabetic in the future, but that's not the whole end goal. It's just taking care of yourself and helping your body stay regulated, your hormone levels stay regulated as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important for women. I know you talked about protein too. It's like, as women, I think historically protein was not as emphasized. I think protein is such a staple with keeping those levels pretty neutral, is just having, like you had said, it kind of like, I always say, kind of anchors you down too. It's like, okay, if you have protein and that carb, like just creating balance in the meals is going to be really important. And I love that you talked about that. There's something else too. Oh, when it comes to, like, if you had a client come to you and they're like, I only drink black coffee in the morning and I refuse to eat breakfast, what would you tell them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, you don't have to give up your coffee. You never have to give up anything. If you want to live a healthy life in a sustainable way, you shouldn't give up anything that you love. But I would definitely encourage them to, even if they absolutely are like, I refuse to eat food, what the most ideal situation would be eat a well-balanced breakfast, protein and carbs, and then have your black coffee. Mm-hmm. If they're like, no, I refuse to do that. Okay, that's fine. Let's add something to your coffee, a protein powder or collagen or something like that, mix that in there so that you're still getting that. They could also drink just like bone broth, like beef bone broth is a really powerful tool. And if you just had a cup of that and then your coffee, I would be happy. But having something before your coffee, because if you drink coffee on an empty stomach, you are setting yourself up for a day of really imbalanced blood sugar, cortisol levels out of the roof. Like you're really setting your day up for high stress and just tiredness, all the things that come with having elevated cortisol levels. So I would encourage them to have breakfast. And if they say no to that, then add something to that coffee to just give it a little bit of protein in there.
Yes, yes. Spice it up just a little bit. Add something. Yeah, like as you said, your body's then in like fight or flight mode throughout the
Mhm.
rest of the day because you gave it caffeine. It's like you're riding this high until you crash at 9 o'clock. You're like, well, darn it, I still have 10 hours to go throughout my day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like, so when we wake up, first of all, our stomach doesn't have very much food in it. I mean, you haven't eaten since the night before. And so it has a lot of stomach acid in there waiting to digest the food that you're going to give it for breakfast. But instead, you're dumping more acid onto that. And so that's going to cause a lot of bloating and a lot of like gas and uncomfortableness to start off your day. And of course, nobody wants to start off the day feeling bloated and uncomfortable.
So when it comes to, you talked about dessert and how you love like your ice cream, your sweets. How do you incorporate that? Like, do you have dessert for every meal? Do you have it once a day? Like, how have you found a balance that works for you? And then how would you recommend somebody like strives to find the balance with sweets?
So whenever I was first going through it, I'll kind of go back in time a little bit. I've always had a sweet tooth and always felt like my sweet tooth kind of guided what I was eating. But last year, so during my fourth year of teaching, I just left my fifth year of teaching. So during my fourth year of teaching was like really, really bad cravings time. For me, I would finish every single day and I would just eat chocolate just as soon as the school day ended. And I found over time, once I learned how to kind of figure out my cravings, and once I developed what I now have for my clients and for myself, I learned that what I was doing was avoiding working because I was super unhappy at my job, but I didn't know that at the time, of course. And so I was eating a lot of sugar, and what that was doing was causing my blood sugar levels to jump really high. And after they jump really high, they come down just as fast, and they go down even lower than they originally were. When your blood sugar levels jump up, so does your dopamine. So your body's really happy. It's feeling really good. And when it crashes down really fast, your dopamine levels also crash really fast. And your body's like, wait, no, we were just feeling really good. We want that again. And so it sends signals and it's like, hey, I want you to eat more sugar, right? I want you to feel as good as we did just a few minutes ago. And so that's whenever you get into that roller coaster, and that's why you can't get out of those craving cycles. And that's what I call physical cravings, right? Is I have two like distinct type of cravings that I coach my clients through: emotional cravings and physical cravings. Emotional cravings obviously come from an emotion. Physical cravings come from a blood sugar roller coaster or being tired or actually being hungry, other things like that. Something physical going on within your body. And what I was doing was I was letting an emotion, stress and sadness and not wanting to be at work, drive me to a physical craving. So I was responding to an emotion, and then that led me to a physical craving, and I couldn't get out of that roller coaster. And that was happening every single day, right? So over time, I developed 4 questions that I asked myself. I call those my core 4 questions. And they helped me. And still now, if I am eating something sweet, then, or wanting something sweet, I ask myself these questions and I figure out, am I eating out of habit? Am I eating this out of boredom? Am I eating this because I actually need some other food because I'm hungry? Or am I eating this because, I'm feeling stressed at work, or because I just got an email that really upset me? If whenever I was going through that time period is whenever I was coming out of a really dark place, and I knew if I wanted to heal my relationship with sugar and stop that I needed to allow myself to have it. Because what was happening is I was waking up every single morning and I was saying, Laura, today is going to be such a good day. You're not going to eat any sugar. And that was the only thing that was a good day in my book, right? Was I wasn't going to eat sugar. The afternoon would come and I would eat sugar every single day. And then it was a bad day, right? And I was directly correlating my day to what I ate, not a healthy way of looking at sugar or any meal. So if somebody came to me and they were saying, like, I really am struggling to find this balance of eating sugar and I want it all the time, but I keep restricting it, then I would say, allow yourself to have it. And I would tell them, if you want to have sugar, eat the chocolate. Let's call it chocolate in this situation. Eat the chocolate and then get up and move your body for 10 minutes, or wait until after dinner, have a balanced snack or a balanced meal, and then eat the chocolate. Don't tell yourself no. Just give yourself some parameters. That's what I like to coach my clients to do, is like, it's never a no. It just might not be the time right now, or it just might be that I can have it and then I need to go move my body. So if somebody came to me and they were really struggling with that, that's what I would coach them to do, is figure out like how they can incorporate it into their day without giving it up completely. And now, as somebody who's 2 years removed from that situation almost, I can very easily decide whether I should or shouldn't eat that sugar. And now I have a dessert usually with my afternoon snack, something like sweet with my afternoon snack and after dinner. And I've just found that that's a comfort thing for me. I like it. I enjoy it. And I don't just eat it alone. I pair, like huge chocolate gems with some lesser evil popcorn and some almonds or something like that, and find a way to incorporate sweets into a snack for myself. But yeah, so to answer your question, don't restrict it and find a way to incorporate it into your life that feels sustainable for you, makes you feel good without leading to guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that too, what you've said in there is so important, of like, you don't have to restrict it to reach even your health goals. Throughout this time, I mean, we always are on a journey of having different goals for ourselves. And like, you're not going to not eat your goal because you have a dessert, once or twice a day. I think that's what always made me so frustrated on my journey, is I would see all these people I looked up to in the health and wellness space, and they would show like what I eat in a day. And they'd have like some oatmeal, and then they'd have some baby carrots and hummus, and it would never show them eating anything sweet. So then I immediately linked like, well, if I want to have six-pack abs and be super toned, like, I can't have any sweets because that's not what this person did. And I think that's when we can kind of get off track, is when we think we have to eliminate an entire, category of foods just to reach our goals, when really, if you have balance in almost everything you're going to do, like, you will not get off track when it comes to whatever goal you have. It's just finding the balance day to day and living a life that's realistic, and not something where you feel like you're kind of like a slave to the diet you're on.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, restriction just leads to binge eating. And I know that from experience. I know that from my own personal experience, coaching clients through these same type of situations. When we say no to it, it just leads to us eating entirely too much of it. I mean, I would go home my 4th year of teaching pretty much every single day ready to throw up, because I had eaten so much sugar that afternoon and I just could not stop. And once I found a way to get out of that cycle, my relationship with sugar completely changed. And I no longer see it as the enemy. I see it as something that brings me joy, which is what I've always wanted and what I've always, that's what I always thought that sugar was. I always thought that it was bringing me joy, but it led to the exact opposite of that for so long. And now that I finally healed that relationship, I know that it does bring me joy. You know what I mean? Like, this is exactly the relationship that I always wanted to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is such like a huge realization too. It's like getting to that point where you finally like can look back at your past and be like, okay, that was where maybe my relationship with sugar wasn't healthy, but now, you're able to enjoy it and realize that it does bring you joy. It doesn't bring you frustration or stress because you weren't strictly following, your no sugar. I'm not going to eat any sugar today. Like, I was the same way with carbs. Like, I'm not eating any carbs today. Strictly low carb diet. It's like, okay, well, I wonder why my energy is depleted all the time, why I can't get out of bed. It's like, well, because you're restricting yourself. And so to get past that too is really important.
And I think that to look that certain way, we've also been told, well, you need to eat less, you need to move your body more, you shouldn't eat carbs, you shouldn't eat sugar, and it's just complete restriction. You know what I mean? There's so many rules around what women are supposed to do, and when we put such strict rules on ourselves, that's what ends up leading to the binge eating and those horrible cycles that I got myself into.
Yeah, I know. I feel like food freedom is just always the goal too, right? Like if you are trapped in that mindset right now, like it's like, well, I couldn't even imagine having a good relationship with food because of where you're at, or a good relationship with exercise. What would you say to, like, what would be your advice to someone who's searching for food freedom? Like, what's one thing they could do today to help them find the freedom with sugar, with dessert, with just eating without restriction?
Mm-hmm. Give yourself permission to have it. I had a client who came to me and she was really deep into the cycle like I was at some point, like she really wanted to. And so I told her, I was like, your only job for the next 2 weeks, in accordance to our working together, was eat a piece of chocolate after every single meal, not the whole chocolate bar, a piece of chocolate too, if you want it, after every single meal. And when she came back to me at our next session, she said, I don't even want it anymore. Like I get to the end of the meal and I'm good. Like I don't need it anymore. And it was because somebody had given her permission to eat it. She knew like, oh, I get to finish this meal and I get to eat it. And then I get to finish the next meal and I get to eat it then too. Like I can have this anytime I want it. And once she realized like, well, I don't need it right now, I can have it later. You know what I mean? Like this isn't my only time. I'm going to get to eat it again after dinner. And so she stopped wanting it as much. And now she feels a lot better. And she doesn't have that strict mindset of like, I can only eat this particular type of chocolate at this particular time of day,
Mm-hmm.
She knows like I can have it anytime I want. That has led to complete freedom for her.
Wow. Yeah, and it's too no longer like shamefully eating it because, I think sometimes too when we eat sweets, we want to eat them in secret because I don't want somebody to see me maybe overeating on something. That can feel very shameful, but when you're given the permission to just eat it and when the next source of it's coming, like you can have, like you said, another piece of chocolate at the next meal. It's like you don't have to eat it all right now and then feel terrible in 10 minutes because you binge ate it. Rather, you can spread it out throughout the day and it becomes an enjoyable product that you can consume.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I was in college, my sophomore and junior year, I was an orientation leader during the summers between those years. And I remember one year that everybody was like together having a good time. And I had snuck away and went back to our dorm room and I was eating Oreos, like literally like in the corner with the lights off. And I was so just ashamed of that. But while I was with everybody else, I wasn't thinking of anything else but those Oreos. Like that was all my mind could think about. So I snuck off. I went to go get them. And then my roommate walked in and she saw me and I was like so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed during that moment. And I think if I had known what I know now, man, that would have saved me so much. Not only just the embarrassment, but just like I would have been able to make so many more memories. I wouldn't have had to sneak away from my friends to go eat Oreos. I could have had memories and had times with my friends that now I'll never get back.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk too about how thinking about like those Oreos, that was all you could think about. It's like, I think the best way too to heal your relationship with food is to not think about food. Like when eating just becomes habit and you just learn how to nourish your body how it wants to be nourished and have balanced plates like you were talking about and regulate your blood sugar levels. Like when all of those pieces of the puzzle come together, it's no longer like all day thinking about the one thing you can finally eat as your dessert, but rather you have a balanced meal, you notice your hunger signals or your full signals, and you can move on without obsessing over the food. And I know that takes a long time. It's definitely not something that happens overnight, but I think when you get to that point too, it's just so freeing.
And I think too, something that's really overlooked whenever it comes to that is like meal planning. And I think, that's not something that's really talked about a lot whenever it comes to this, but planning what you're going to eat and having a plan for my balanced meals. I know that, and when I was teaching, I would I would have my breakfast planned and I would prep it the night before, so it was ready for me the next morning. My lunchbox would always have my favorite candy bar in it. It would always have that in there. And so I knew as soon as lunch was over, I was going to get to eat some of that chocolate, and it was fine. I was fine with that. And I knew that if I wanted it as part of my snack, then I had a balanced snack and I could incorporate that chocolate if I wanted to. Like, keeping it with you, planning for it, allowing it to be a part of your plan, saying it's okay. I have this here because I want it to be here, right? Not because it's something that I can't control, and like I'm going to keep it away and hope that I won't ever find it again so that it doesn't tempt me anymore. It's still going to be tempting. If it's not with you, then you're still going to want it. You can say, I'm just going to clean out my pantry and I'm not going to have these things around anymore. You're still going to want them.
Yeah, then it's like, well, then you go get ice cream because you don't have any ice cream in your freezer because you didn't want it in the house. It's like, well, you're still going to either spend money on it one way or another.
And then you just feel even more guilty about it because I said I wasn't going to have this. And now I'm going out at 9:30 at night to go get ice cream. Like, why do I do this to myself? Right? Like, why can't I control myself? That's the question that we keep asking ourselves when we come into those situations. And I know because I've been there, and I'm sure so have you at some point.
Yes. It's like you go to Trader Joe's and they've got all the ice cream. It's like, well, I'm not going to get it this time because I won't eat it that way. And then it's like I end up going back and getting ice cream anyway. So it's like, why do we tell ourselves, no, we're not going to have that. We can't have that, but instead incorporate it. Like you've been talking about this whole episode, incorporate it into what you're eating, plan for it. And that's something I really wanted to talk to you about because you're like the meal planning queen. I always see like your Instagram, you're always like, this is what we're planning. And every Sunday, is it Sundays that you plan out all your meals for the week?
So we meal plan we talk about what we're going to eat and meal plan on Fridays. And then I make my grocery list on Saturdays. And then Sundays, whenever we go grocery shopping, and I like prep for the week.
I love it. You're so organized when it comes to that. So what would you say, like for me, for example, for me too, that's something I'm wanting to get into. How have you gotten into meal planning and do it in a way that's not overwhelming week to week?
Yeah, I think one, having set days, like I just told you what our set days are, and making them known. Like if you have a partner or somebody else who is a part of this, let them know what the days are too. Shane, my husband, he knows what my days are. Like he knows that on Friday night when we get to dinner, we go out to eat. Sometimes we eat at home. Sometimes maybe we're in the road. Like this weekend, we're going out of town. We're going to meal plan in the car on Friday on the way to our trip. Like he knows what those days are. And that is really, really beneficial because it allows both of us to come to the conversation with ideas, right? Like I think part of the problem with meal planning is we don't exactly know what the meals are that like I don't know. Like you sit down and you're like, I don't even know what to eat this week, and it gets overwhelming and it gets frustrating. Whereas because both of us know Friday afternoon we're going to be talking about this, we're thinking about it all week, and we both come to the conversation with ideas about what we could eat that week. So that's really, really helpful. Assigning days to it, assigning times to it also makes it really helpful, like I mentioned. And I think too, just like keeping it simple. I literally keep a spiral bound notebook and a pencil in my kitchen on my counter. And that's where I write what we're having each day. And I use just like a regular loose leaf piece of paper for my grocery list. Like it's nothing fancy. It is so simple. And I think that also makes it really easy. Is like, it doesn't have to be this complicated thing. Just keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, a lot of times we think we have to have the fancy notebook or have to like have a certain app to put in our grocery list and our meal planning when really you can use what you have. Like, I think the reason we keep maybe putting it off, and like for me, for example, I put it off because I'm like, well, if I put it on a piece of paper, I'm going to lose the piece of paper. And it's just an excuse to not do it. But rather, like you said, having set days and just using what you have, like blank sheet of paper, pencil, like let's come together, plan this, and then you can know what to expect for the next week. So then when it comes to meal planning, do you factor in the days that you're going out to eat, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, we do. So whenever I sit down on Fridays to meal plan together, first thing that I do is pull up my calendar. Shane has like a pretty normal schedule. He doesn't really need to look at his calendar, but because of this job, I've got stuff going on sometimes in the evenings, or sometimes we're going out of town. We come to the conversation and I know what what days I'm going to need that. We also plan for leftovers. Like at this point, because I've been cooking for us for a good bit of time, I know which of these meals that we cook regularly is going to give us leftovers. And I can kind of just gauge, even if it's a new meal, I can be like, okay, I think that will probably give us leftovers, or maybe it'll give me one portion of leftovers and I'll use them for lunch the next day. So yeah, absolutely. I think planning for leftovers is a really good hack for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think too, and I don't know if you remember this from IIN when we went through our health coaching, but it's always like cook once, eat twice was like the big thing I remember taking away. And so that makes it a lot less overwhelming too when it comes to meal planning, is when you can factor in having leftovers. Because it's like, okay, I'm not actually making every single meal, but I know like my supper, if I'm okay with leftovers, that'll translate then to my lunch. And that can be a lot less overwhelming.
That was huge for me. When I was teaching, when I was working like a regular job, not from home like I do now. Even now, I still do that. Like we would plan and I would say, okay, we're having chicken salsa tacos for dinner tonight. I know that usually makes 4 portions. We're going to have it once for dinner. We'll both eat. And then I'm going to have it for 2 lunches as well this week. Like you can figure it out once you make it a time or two and realize how much of portions it's going to make. So it is trial and error initially. And I think too, if it's something that you're getting new to and you're not sure how to gauge your leftovers, towards the end of the week, plan things you can keep in the freezer if you don't get to it. So for us for dinner towards Thursday and Friday, I'll have the meat still in the freezer and maybe frozen vegetables instead of fresh vegetables and things like that, so that if I don't get to it, it's fine. Those things can wait until next week. It'll save us money next week anyway. Yep. And that way I can still use these leftovers, right? So allowing the leftovers to be for lunch, or if there's enough for dinner as well, and planning for that and being flexible with it too.
Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about craving sweets, but also if you're someone who craves, going out to eat because, you like the fries and the burgers, like I think we would both agree that's not a bad thing. But when you plan out the meals that you're eating out, you can maybe eat accordingly that week or that day, knowing like I'm going out to eat tonight and I want to get whatever I want on the menu because I need to enjoy that food because that is balance as well. So I really love to that, like I said, you factor in all meals, and then you also have stuff in your freezer for when maybe you don't feel like cooking or you don't get to making whatever it was that you had scheduled.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like for me and you, we're both married, and a lot of my schedule coincides with Shane's, right? Like we do things together. If you're somebody who's single or somebody who isn't married, maybe you go out to eat with friends and it's a little bit more spontaneous, right? Like you're not quite as regimented as maybe someone like me is. Then there's a way to work around that as well. Plan, say, okay, I'm going to have these 3 meals this week, and then also this one thing in the freezer for if somebody asks me to go out, then I'll go out with them and that'll be okay. And if they don't, then I have this thing that I can pull out of the freezer and fix as well in case. So if you're somebody who's like, but I can't plan for when I'm going to go out to eat, it's a little bit more spontaneous, that's okay too. Like there's a way to work around that as well.
Yeah, just having the ingredients to make, like you said, the 3 meals a day or 3 meals for that week. I love that. I've never thought about that because it gets easy when you have a partner to collaborate with too, of like, what do you want to eat this week? When you're by yourself, that can get a lot more difficult too, or just to have the motivation to cook for one, I think can be hard.
Yeah, definitely. So one of my favorite things for like lacking motivation is cooking one thing and then eating it a few different ways is like really just a fun way to mix it up so that you don't have to have the motivation to cook every single day.
Yes, I know. I think that's too, like people think it can get boring if you're like repeating meals, but I think with protein, like we emphasize protein a lot, but it's like that's the hardest thing to want, like to be motivated to cook. I think like if you would even just do hamburger and then you made sloppy joes one day, you put in a chili the next day, and then another day you had tacos. It's like, okay, that was one product, but you got so many different meals from it and it didn't taste the same in every meal.
Yeah, finding different ways to eat the same protein, super beneficial. And
Yeah.
then too, like if you finish a meal and there's still a significant amount left over, freeze it, put it in a container, put it in the freezer. You can come back to it in a week or two so that you're not eating the same thing every single day.
Yeah. So good. You're so good. You're so on top of it. I like listen to you, I'm like, geez, that is my goal. Maybe that needs to be my goal this year is like, okay, I've got 4 months, however many months left of the year, like, let's get on meal prepping. Because it is inspiring to hear you talk about it and have so much energy behind it. It's not like, oh yeah, Fridays we have to meal prep. It's like, no, Fridays we get to meal prep and have a conversation around food. And then the rest of our week is so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. It does. It really sets you up for success and makes your week so much more enjoyable. You're not having to worry about what you're going to eat. You're not turning to fast food for convenience. It's not a conversation that ends up leading to a argument with your partner or something like that. Like you actually, it's just simplicity whenever you meal plan.
Well, Laura, it's been so good to talk to you. I feel like, we've been talking for a while. We might wrap it up. There is a final question that I want to ask every guest. So, on this podcast, it is the Nourish with Purpose podcast. We talk a lot about our purpose and how it's not necessarily linked to a specific job or role in our lives, but instead, like the characteristics that back up that role that ultimately lead to having a meaningful life or living a meaningful life. So, Laura, what would you say is your purpose?
I think that's a really difficult question, and I love it so much. I would say at this point in my life right now, I'm thinking back on honestly when you said that, the first thing that popped into my head was my career as a teacher, which is funny because I left that just recently. But I think that my purpose right now in life is to be a friend, to be somebody who loves on others and can be almost a light at the end of the tunnel type situation. Like life gets dark and it gets heavy and it gets really hard. And if I could be somebody who can grab your hand and we can get through this together, you don't have to do it alone. Let's make it to the end together. That's probably my purpose right now, is to be there for people who feel like there's nobody there for them, who feel like they can't make it any further. I'll come pick you up and help you along the way.
Wow, there is nothing that has embodied you more. I feel like that just truly is an embodiment of you. And that is such a good answer. And I would absolutely 100% agree that you are truly living out your purpose.
Thank you. I love that. That means so much to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Laura, for being here. It's so nice to talk to you. And just all of the insight that you've provided on this episode is truly amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love this. Thank you so much, Bailey.
All right, so if you made it to the end of today's video, I just want to thank you again for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to give it a rating or review on either Apple Podcast or Spotify. I am doing a wellness bundle giveaway at the end of the year, so I'll be drawing for that. Another way to get additional entries is to repost that you're listening to the podcast on your story, and then go ahead and send me a screenshot if you're private, just so I can see it, and I'll get you added into that drawing again or as well. I also wanted to quickly end this in a prayer, and then I'll get you out of here. So, dear Lord, thank you just so much for the opportunity today to talk to Laura and just the wisdom and the purpose that you've placed on her heart. I just ask that you'd continue to be with everyone who's listened to today's episode, and if anything in their life right now feels heavy, or if they feel restriction or shame or a negative mindset, that they would just find comfort today knowing that it is possible for them to feel that, and that they aren't alone in their journey, and that you're there and there are people around them that love them so dearly and want to help them through that too. Again, just thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk on here so openly with others and have this platform to really share what's on my heart and have on really inspiring people to do the same. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, and that's all I have for you. I'll talk to you next Wednesday. Bye.